Welcome to The Road. This is a weekly podcast of All Saints Lutheran Church. I'm your host, John Pedersen, and I serve as pastor. Each week, we reflect on faith, life, and navigating the road ahead. The language of journey is common when we think about life. It has its joys and challenges along the way, and we all need a little encouragement and guidance at times to keep us going. There's a word in the Bible, asphalia, which means truth, but it's the same root word we use in English for asphalt, if you can believe that. It's a solid surface that makes travel easier and more assured. And so every week we're going to be exploring elements of faith and life that keep us on the road. Faith isn't about living a perfect life. It's about finding our way, getting through rough spots, but seeking out those great vistas too. You can find my weekly message here, but you'll also find special conversations with guests who have insights on things like wellness, parenting, and living with unique purpose. If you appreciate this podcast, remember to subscribe where possible and share it with a friend. Here's this week's message. Today is the final day of the church year, in case you didn't know that the church had a separate year system. This is Christ the King Sunday, sometimes called the Reign of Christ. When you come to the end of anything, it's helpful to reflect. In many years, we conclude with the story of Jesus' crucifixion like we just did because it brings to focus what is arguably the most important moment in Jesus' life, the end. It may not be fair, but in the ancient world, people often thought that the moments before someone's death would reveal who they truly were. Close to death, people might repent and see the error of their ways. On his deathbed, Martin Luther, for example, was asked if he stood by his writings, and he said yes. The wisdom of Solomon is considered a part of the Bible in the Catholic and Orthodox traditions, and in chapter 2, we hear the voices of some who oppose a person they call the righteous one, who professes to have knowledge of God and calls himself a child of the Lord. Those who oppose this righteous one say, "Let us lie in wait for the righteous man, for he is inconvenient to us and opposes our actions. He became to us a reproof of our thoughts. The very sight of him is a burden to us, because his manner of life is unlike that of others, and his ways are strange." They say, "Let us see if his words are true, and let us test what will happen at the end of his life. For if the righteous one is God's son, he will help him and will deliver him from the hand of his adversaries. Let us test him with insult and torture. Let us condemn him to a shameful death." Many see Jesus as an embodiment of this passage. Jesus embodied wisdom and grace, even to the end, and by his unconventional ways, he became inconvenient and a burden to those who reject righteousness. The crucifixion of Jesus shows us that God's ways are surprising and unexpected. When many people imagine a generic image of God, they assume a figure who demonstrates unlimited power and crushes enemies. But instead, we see in Jesus, Son of God, someone who is gracious to his enemies. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." He endures mocking and offers words of comfort and assurance to a criminal next to him on another cross. Keep this image in mind. In contrast, about 500 years ago, not long before Luther posted his 95 Theses, a man named Niccolo Machiavelli wrote a book called The Prince. It's set up as a handbook for any prince or ruler who wants power. Some well-known quotes from The Prince include, "We have not seen great things done in our time except by those who have been considered mean. The rest have failed. A prince wishing to keep his state is very often forced to do evil. Good works will do you harm. Princes who have done great things have done them by deceit and betrayal. It is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. A man who wishes to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroys him among so much that is evil. Hence it is necessary for a prince wishing to hold his own to know how to do wrong." According to Machiavelli, a prince is not there to help promote the welfare of others. A prince should only be concerned about his own welfare, even at the expense of others. The term Machiavellian has come to mean ruthless and cunning, and on the surface it seems to be wise, if harsh counsel. Being good never got anyone anywhere. Just follow your lowest instincts and you will go far. We can see how this mentality has been adopted by people throughout history, even to the present, but it was intended only as wise counsel to benefit the ruler or the one in power. Nations will at times, if not often, employ this logic for their own benefit at the expense of others. It's a path that often leads to wide-scale loss and suffering for everyone else. It can bring momentary gains, giving way, however, to the next person who is ready to use even more debased and ruthless methods. Although Machiavelli wrote this book long after Jesus stood before Pilate at his trial, Pilate could have written the book. Pilate and other Roman princes had to be ruthless to keep power in the Roman Empire. This might seem to be the only option to survive. Yet Jesus was a different kind of king. The life, teachings, death, and resurrection of Jesus remain a counterpoint to this old destructive path. They offer a way of life in a world in which God's abundance is shared and peace can be known by all. In our reading from Colossians today, Paul says, God has enabled you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. God does not hold on to power and the privileges, but shares them with us. And now our faith and our lives are a witness to this light. In a world that is too often harsh and brutal, we shine light on another kind of path. Christian faith offers a better way that says it is better to be loved and to love than to be feared. Christians hold as our highest ideal not holding on to power at all costs, but loving our neighbor. Paul acknowledges the unconventional nature of this different way when he says in 1 Corinthians, the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. At baptism, we hear these words of commissioning. Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Our mission is to let light shine in the way we live our lives for others. In the same way that we share in the inheritance of the saints in light, we are called now to share it ourselves. Today is the end of our series, Light for This Moment, and a day set aside to make commitments to supporting our mission in the coming year. All Saints, along with the wider church, has been a light pointing to the love and grace of God and seeking to accompany people in times of uncertainty, grief, and struggle, but also in times of hope, gratitude, and joy. This year, we're going beyond 10% of what we take in to share with local partners, including ICA, which provides assistance with food, jobs, and housing. All Saints was one of 5 churches that helped start ICA as a food shelf back in 1971. We've continued to be major supporters over the years, helping our community. We also support Urban Ventures, which provides cradle-to-career support for our neighbors in South Minneapolis. We support Mental Health Connect, which provides a warm line, helping people like us get the support we need to navigate the mental health system, and it's part of our effort to destigmatize mental illness. And we give to additional organizations like Treehouse Minnetonka, Lutheran Social Service, and Lutheran World Relief. New this coming year, as you may have heard, we're establishing a $10,000 fund at Relate Counseling Center for children, youth, and young adults to ensure that every young person finds the support they need through difficult times in life. Relate is present in area school districts and was started from the efforts of some local churches, and we're continuing that tradition of support. Everyone deserves hope, and we want to ensure money is never an obstacle. It's great to be part of a community like this. where we can come together and be a blessing for neighbors in this moment. It's meaningful to know that we can do something to help others experience the meaning and the goodness of this life. In Colossians, Paul encourages people of faith, "May you be made strong with all the strength that comes from his glorious power, so that you may have all endurance and patience, joyfully giving thanks." Well, we all need endurance and patience, but most of all, it's a gift to be able to express thanks in a spirit of joy. We don't come to joy simply out of luck or fortune. Joy isn't something we have because everything goes our way or we're more blessed than others. Joy is a deep sense of peace and satisfaction that is possible even despite circumstances. Willie James Jennings is a professor at Duke University and says that joy is an act of resistance against despair and its forces. Joy, he says, is a work that can become a state, that can become a way of life. Joy resists despair and all the ways it wants to drive us toward death and to make death the final word. And death doesn't just mean the end of life, but all the ways that life can be strangled through things like violence, debt, and war. Joy happens when we make something good and worthwhile out of pain, suffering, and the absurd. And so even toward the end of a life, and in the midst of one, we can look back through hardships and find reasons to be joyful and grateful for our relationships, what we did for others, how we helped and contributed in some way. All of that is possible, even if some of those relationships were strained or the ways we tried to help didn't always work out the way we expected. This is what God's mission in our world looks like. It's exactly this kind of work of bringing something good out of what is broken, bringing healing and hope out of despair, reconciling relationships, and bringing joy where there's only been a sense of loss. Paul says finally in Colossians that through Jesus, God was pleased to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace through the blood of his cross. In the cross, we see a God who is vulnerable and willing to sacrifice for us, even to the point of death. This is not a God who reflects Machiavellian values, holding on to power and glory at any expense, but a God who loves us deeply and is willing to suffer so that we can be freed from fear and the forces of despair. And so in every time and age, but especially for this moment, we gather to sing and pray as people of faith. Together we recall God's love for us and our neighbors, known and unknown. We remember our baptismal callings, that the one who is the light of the world has now called us to let our light shine in the darkness of our world and our human situations. God has made reconciliation with us possible because of grace and love. And together we work to bring reconciliation in our community and world, being a light for renewed peace and love and hope. We're thankful for this past year and what lies ahead, knowing that Christ accompanies us in every circumstance. Amen. That's this week's message. You don't have to navigate the road ahead alone. You can join with others at All Saints. Visit allsaintsmtka.org for more information. Have a great week.